Welcome to the Untangling Life podcast. I'm Hattie Willis.
And I'm Ayim.
And today we are going to explore and untangle how we got started on this podcast and where it is going next.
We're smiling because we're so excited. This is like a long time coming, isn't it? We knew that this just feels right.
I feel like the relationship and the questions that we're asking on this show, we've been asking each other for a couple of years, and often, I end up quoting you all the time, so I just wanted to bring people into the conversation so they could hear it firsthand.
Likewise, and I know we're going to dive into it, but I do love the name because I am constantly untangling my life till today, and I don't think it's going to stop, and I think that's something a lot of people listening can relate to as well.
Yeah, so this is obviously our first episode, and it's designed as a bit of an explainer on why we got started, what we're trying to do with it, and why we hope it will be really useful to you listening. So maybe just to get us started, this is a podcast that is not about us having the answers. We're not sitting on this sofa as the gurus of self-help. I wish. I really wish. However, as two people who are spending a lot of our time trying to be quite deliberate about what we're designing into and out of our lives at the moment.
Yeah.
And Andy has a lot of frameworks around that. I've been having very deep life conversations that have been very recent around that. It's a topic that I think is really close to both of our hearts. And we both spend a lot of our time, we'll do a bit more of an explainer on what we do. We spend a lot of our time coaching people in completely different spheres. And what I find is these questions come up all the time where people have defaulted onto a path. They've just kept going, one foot in front of the other, and then they often end up in lives they don't love, or with completely unrecognised, unfulfilled potential and a feeling that so much has been left on the table.
Yeah, I often talk about living by default, not design. And then actually, how do we reconnect back to our original design and who we're meant to be and how we're meant to express ourselves? And it takes intention. It takes a decision.
Yeah.
And we've both made a decision in our lives to be more intentional so that we can live by design and not default. And that's essentially what we're going to share more as we process and go through that on this podcast. So really vulnerable and open.
Yeah, scary.
As individuals, but hopefully helpful for others as well.
And really candidly, one of the reasons I wanted to do this podcast is I felt like the process of having a cadence where we're going to be recording episodes, we're having these conversations, would be a forcing factor for me to keep being really reflective and keep holding my own feet to the fire a little bit, when it's sometimes easy to want to step back and just let things happen. But interesting, I told my dad about the podcast and a bit of what it was about, and his first question was, well, so you're not allowing any room for kind of luck or spontaneity in your life? And I said, no, that's not what intentional life design is about. But I think it's about really knowing what you want so that you can go after it and make it happen. But then so much of what makes it happen is going to be opportunity that comes up.
Yeah, I think actually what this is really about is stepping into being intentional regardless how things go. You know, so whether things go in our favor or don't, whether we fail or succeed, whether we get a promotion or we don't, whether we win that new business client or we don't, how are we going to reflect and respond to that now that we're trying to be more intentional?
Yeah.
I think that's the beauty of this path, is that, you know, I use a mosaic as a good analogy, where every single individual piece which is broken is seen as rubbish and invaluable and not valuable to anyone. But actually, when you piece them all together in the hands of an artist, it makes a masterpiece. It makes a mosaic. And that's what we're trying to do now. We're trying to be intentional with these broken pieces in our lives, to say, actually, when we put them together in the hands of a master, and we are all the own masters of our lives, we can actually really shape something beautiful.
This is why I want to do it with you. I just get to sit and listen to poetry. But I just want to touch on...
Can't guarantee that every episode.
What? I'm out. I'm gone. But I do actually want to touch on something there, which is, when we were talking about this and in trying to describe it to people, I've realised that I have quite a strong aversion to anything that speaks too much to like self-help, personal development, because I think it's often coming from a place that's so ungrounded in reality. And I think what we both...
As in that it feels too abstract and not
too
realistic.
abstract, too optimistic. Like, I often hear things, I'm like, well, sure, like, you make it sound really easy, but life's not that easy. And I think one of the things that we're really keen to do in this show is to have both really practical interventions that you can make. There's going to be a lot around journaling prompts, practical exercises you can run, that we run with leaders in companies we work with, that we run with ourselves in our personal lives. So lots of practice, but also, and this is the scary part for us, right? The reality of what's really hard about doing that and where that sometimes doesn't work. Because what I personally don't respond to is someone who says everything like it's easy and like they've got it worked out. And then I'm trying to apply it and I'm thinking, this is not, my reality is so much messier than this. And then I either feel like I'm the one messing it all up, or I feel like, well, that was a really nice sales line, but it doesn't work in practice. So this is not a self-help book of go through these 5 stages and reach self-actualization. It's much messier than that. And we're deliberately going to try and share the mess of that, I think, in the process, and where we're still finding it really hard and complicated and confusing.
Absolutely.
And what's helping us as we go through.
As you were speaking, it reminded me of like a map versus a compass. It's like we're not trying to map the territories for everyone to say, actually, if you go left, follow the next right, double down on yourself and go straight, you're going to arrive at the destination. But what we're trying to do is help you tap back into your inner compass, which will give you a sense of direction, but it's not going to tell you exactly where you're going to get to, because I can't do that. I'm not a mind reader. You're not a mind reader. I don't know if there's any mind readers watching or listening to this.
Please get in touch and come on the show.
But with your compass, at least it gives you some sense of direction. And one of my big things is like direction over speed. Like just be patient, play the long game, and just commit to a direction. And that's what we're trying to commit to, a direction, and hopefully help people with the tools that have helped us when committing to that direction, like journaling that you mentioned, and other things that we'll, I'm sure, get into in each episode.
And the way we're going to do that, to start with at least, and we're leaving room for it to evolve based on what you like, what works, what you ask for, is that we're going to have a series of episodes that focus on areas that we think really unlock something in us. So looking at things like limiting beliefs and how that holds you back, looking at things around how do you start knowing how to say no to things, how do you hold the middle messy ground when you're letting go of things, and the new things haven't arisen yet. I'm in that very much in my life right now, and I'm finding it really hard. So we're going to share kind of themes each week. Each week we'll have a little bit of a sense of what those themes mean to people in the audience. We'll be asking ahead of the sessions for you to tell us your definitions. So if you want to get involved, I can't wait to hear them.
So messy.
It's so messy.
A lot to untangle.
Yeah, so much untangling. And then we're going to go into our reflections, our lessons learned on the topic. We're also going to welcome questions. So if there's something that you would like us to reflect on that is a current challenge that you'd like another perspective on, again, not that we will solve it for you, but we'll try and help come up with some questions we might ask, some perspectives and stories we can share. And then each week there'll be a practical journaling prompt. We're going to talk about journaling because Andy has the beast of all trackers, the beautiful geeky database that you can start to track the trends in your life and use. And
I'll explain the method to the madness during this episode.
Yeah, and what our hope is I've never used this. So we deliberately have held off me using your journaling technique, your tracker, until we start this podcast. I'm both excited and quite nervous.
Do you know what? I commend the courage and I appreciate you giving it a try.
Yeah.
Whether it works for you or not, we're going to learn.
And I'll be really honest.
But I'm really grateful that you're willing to give it a try. And I think that in itself says a lot about who you are, but also about just having the right attitude of, I want to give things a try. You know, it sounds like such a small thing, but in doing that, you're making a decision. And it all starts with a decision. And
that's what we're going to try and give you listening, is lots of things to try. And I'm going to share what I find using this tracker. Maybe my life changes forever. I'm very excited.
Hopefully in a good way.
Imagine Hattie can't join the next episode because she's having an existential crisis in the corner.
Hattie's like moved to Bali and she's now just exploring herself.
I mean, that's not a bad. I mean, I'm okay with that.
We can take the podcast international.
And we are going to be
crawl before you walk.
We're going to be recording in Ghana actually soon.
That is true. To be fair.
So we will go through. We will share that. We're going to do a section of this episode introducing that. So I'm going to be learning live, and I'll ask lots of questions that people listening might want to know. And we'll each week have a newsletter that goes out with the pod that shares practical journaling tips, resources we found really useful, some of our reflections, and you'll have the link to tools like the journal in that. So this week's newsletter.
And that's a free tool.
Free to use.
Yeah.
For anyone who's stumbled upon this and stuck with us this far but has no idea who either of us are, should we maybe introduce ourselves more properly?
That'd be a good idea.
So Andy,
or should I introduce you to a degree and then you can introduce me?
Yeah, good test.
Quite fun.
It's fun and scary, but let's do it. You go first.
Okay, everyone. So this is Hattie Willis, my glorious co-host on this podcast, and also the founder of Guessworks and If We Raise, where she runs entrepreneurial workshops for schools, university groups, and leaders in large companies to give them the entrepreneurial skills to succeed, whether they're an entrepreneur or a leader in a company innovating.
No pressure. That was actually very good. Damn it, Andy.
That all right?
That was great. Okay.
I better write that one down.
I'm gonna introduce you a little differently. And I have a cheat code here, which is that one of the things that I think we will touch on in a future episode is Andy has a user guide, which he shares with people that talks about himself. And I'll let you fill in more of the gaps than I'm going to do. But I'm actually going to start with, this is Andy. He is a dad to two beautiful children, husband to a wonderful wife who is great to hang out with, would strongly recommend going for lunch with, and a man of faith. A man who is on a mission to spread love and light to all those around him. And for anyone listening who, like me, has a different relationship with faith, I think it's going to be quite interesting to explore what your faith does for you. And as someone who's kind of more agnostic myself, we can touch on that side of things.
Absolutely.
But someone of deep faith who lets that drive how you serve others in the world. So big fan of servant leadership. And the way Andy does that has evolved a lot over the years. He's been in product management roles in companies that were growing fast. He's been a founder with his brother of a company called Mixtape Madness.
Wow, super impressed.
Then gone on and been an angel investor. So backing early stage companies with his own money and helping them succeed. And then not only was that not enough, he went on and taught loads of people how to do that with Angel Investing School, which became Open Angel. And now goes in and designs and facilitates sessions to help leaders, often in big corporates like Tesco, Google, Nando's, to really bring out what they need in their leadership. I've missed lots, but
oh my gosh, I was so impressed with that. That was so good.
And he's my friend.
Yes, first and foremost, we are actually friends. We didn't just come together for this podcast, and we do a ton of work together.
Yeah, we do
as well, and we'll continue to.
Yeah, I hope so.
Have me
unless the podcast goes really wrong.
That was super impressive. Thank you, Hattie.
Oh, and I
can tell you've read the personal user guide.
I have read the personal user guide, and Andy was actually an early advisor on If We Raise, my company. He knows my co-founder really well and has been a big support for us there, and then obviously delivered a lot of our training now. We go and co-deliver when we can find an excuse. So, yeah.
So I think that links to our origin story in terms
let's
of
tell
how we knew each other, because we couldn't quite remember who introduced us, but we think we have a theory around who introduced us initially. It may have been Marcus X, or a mutual friend of both of ours. He's like a super connector, so it wouldn't surprise me.
Not at all.
But our first meeting, I remember Hattie was in a coffee shop, sitting outside on her desk, and we were talking all about innovation and entrepreneurship, and I was hooked. Because we have that shared mutual passion and interest in this topic, not just as spectators, but as like educators who can empower others based on what we've experienced and what we've learned. And I think we quickly recognized that, and probably knew in some shape or form we were gonna hang out or figure out how to do some sort of work together, but it wasn't as evident in that first meeting. I just knew something clicked.
I'm gonna tell my side of this, because I love hearing Andy's side. My side was so much more nervous. So I had been told about you, and I had this call with you. And the context for me was that I had quit my job not hugely long before.
Yeah, I remember that.
I hadn't started If
That
We
was
Raise.
corporate innovation.
It was corporate. I was a corporate venture builder, so my job was to come up with a new $1 billion business every 8 weeks. Quite a hard job, quite fun. Not 100% success rate. But I'd kind of come out of that because I wanted to have a bit more control on the impact I was able to have with my work. I knew I wanted to do my own thing. I didn't quite know what it was yet, but I knew that one of the things that made me really mad and one of my passions, and I quite often get asked by people, where do you find ideas for what you should spend your time on? And I often say, well, what makes you really mad? What's the pain that you're desperate to be solved? I was really mad about the funding gap, how many founders don't get funded because actually they don't look like the investor, they don't have a shared background. And so I was just having really early conversations with lots of angel investors, lots of people who were investing in the space to try and understand what they did and didn't do, and to try and work out, was there a space in this problem that I could help solve? And so when Marcus really kindly introduced me to you, and Marcus is also an angel investor, he'd also been the CEO of a company I loved called Moniz, who I used to use as a teaching example before I met Marcus. So I already had like real imposter syndrome meeting Marcus.
And he successfully exited a digital marketing business.
Amazing guy, and just a lovely guy. And I was so nervous to meet him. And then he introduced me to you, and I read up on Andy, and I was so nervous. I thought, this is someone who's really making change in the space, because you were at that point really leading the front on bringing more diverse angels into the space. So you were helping people who'd never considered that they could be angel investors to see that potential in themselves, to evaluate the skills that they have, to find their passions and where they might want to invest, and to practically learn how to do it. So I was kind of getting on this call thinking, oh gosh, this guy's really doing something. I'm really in awe of it. And then
was that feeling because you wanted to do something purposeful and meaningful?
100%. And I really admired what you were doing. And I think at the time I still had a lot of imposter syndrome about my right to be doing something in that space. And also, classically, I was running late. I think I've run late for every one of our meetings. I was running late for that meeting too. I just found a coffee shop. The Wi-Fi wasn't working. I was really, I remember being so stressed. And then getting on this call and thinking, this guy's amazing and he's being so kind and so generous. And I was desperate we could do something together, but it was kind of like a stretch goal for me. And I think this is a good example of, often I think we pedestal people. And I'm really guilty of I look up to people, I admire them so much, and I want to be like them. But actually, I'm increasingly trying to think about what could I do with them 100%. Rather than how could I emulate them.
Yeah, I love that reframe. And like from my perspective, when I had that first meeting, and I think the following 12 months, I was so impressed at your ability to execute on ideas, because you told me about what you wanted to do and guessworks at the time. But I always say like the graveyard is full of ideas that have gone to die.
It's true. I've got many in my ideas graveyard.
So I always say like ideas are overrated and execution is undervalued. But you were really executing an idea, and I felt like every update it was like, oh yeah, now we're working with Imperial College London. Now we're working with London School of Economics. Now we're working with, and you were just growing while doing great work, like interesting work. So I can't remember the first piece of work you asked, like, oh, Andy, would you be interested in collaborating on? But I definitely have some memorable pieces of work where I'm like, oh, I'm not going to forget that. That made a massive impression on me. One that that I loved from this year was summer schools with London School of Economics, teaching 16 to 19-year-olds these life skills through entrepreneurship. Love that. Our time in Ghana together for the Commonwealth Fellowship, teaching entrepreneurs across different Commonwealth nations coming to Ghana for that boot camp. Incredible. Our time at the independent school, doing again another version of almost like a summer school with young people again, was incredible. And then I can't wait to work on the young people program that you have in the pipeline currently. So I feel like all of these fond memories have come through like working together. And I know often people may have a relationship with work where they don't enjoy it as much and there's escapism, but here I'm talking about, no, we love the work that we do and we recognize how fortunate we are to work alongside value-aligned people, even outside of ourselves, in our circle. We can name so many people who are value-aligned that we enjoy working with.
And I think it picks up on so many threads that we are going to keep unpacking. I mean, having a clear purpose or helping get to a clear purpose. And one of my big intentional things that I wrote down when I was planning for this quarter, what do I want to do more of, what would make me feel like I'm loving my business even more, was doing more work with you. I wrote your name down.
Likewise.
Oh, stop. Love it. And this was before we had the idea for the podcast. It's
all organic.
I
it's
know,
just so
I love
natural.
it.
Just pulling that thread of curiosity.
But I do think there's a big point already there around this idea of intentional life design. For me, a big part is who you give yourself permission to bring into that life, and how audacious you are in your goals of who could do that.
Absolutely.
And I think often we see someone that we would love to learn from, but we have a sense that they're too far ahead, too good, that they wouldn't be interested. And one of the things I think we've both found really helpful throughout our own careers, but also we're now trying to bring in to big companies, is this idea of mutual mentoring, right? Someone might actually be at a completely different level, but there's learning goes both ways.
Absolutely. And even when you shared that, it reminded me of, like, we connected on purpose around the topic of purpose, because we both wanted to make a really positive impact on the world of entrepreneurship, especially for underserved entrepreneurs, people of color, women, and people that just are underserved in that space. So in connecting in that way, it made it a lot easier to work together. And, you know, I just want to be transparent on the podcast. Like, it was never a conversation about money between us, you know. And I think that's important, because as entrepreneurs, I always say to people, like, your first, like, 100K is so difficult. But once you get past that mark, it gets easier. And that's a really privileged thing to say. But that first 100K is such a difficult path. Then once you get past it, you realize how to do business development. You start getting more referrals. You start getting people who you've worked with before who want to work with you again. You start getting introductions. But getting to that point is so difficult. But that conversation never got into the way in us building a friendship or building business together or collaborating and serving clients. And I think there's something beautiful about that. The fact that actually the money was always like an afterthought, but it's always looked after itself.
And I think one of the things, whether you're thinking about going to business with someone, whether you're thinking about just how you're building team around you or how you're connecting in your personal life, I think it's often really easy to almost kind of default to being quite transactional with people, because we're not actually valuing enough that things can work their way out. And actually, you know, I think a beautiful example of this is, you know, recently we ran an event together. I felt bad. Andy brought most of the people to it, and I sent you a text. Life's been a lot for me recently, and I just felt like I hadn't pulled my weight, and it was becoming another thing that I could, you know, beat myself up at. Oh, you know, now you're not delivering this. And I texted Andy and I said, I'm sorry. I feel like you've brought most of the people. And what did you say back?
I can't even remember.
I remember. It was so beautiful.
But even in hearing it now, I'm laughing, because I'm like, oh my gosh, Hattie does so much. Like, this stuff comes round. Like, this time I'm taking it. Next time I need to lean on her, and I know that I can. Right.
Well, your exact quote was, sometimes you'll lean on me, sometimes I'll lean on you. And I cried. Because I was like, so for me, a big part of the intentional life design is, how am I surrounding myself with people who have my back? And you know, Andy and I have talked a lot about this. This is, you know, a podcast where we are going to share personal stuff, and there will be some boundaries around it. So I'm not going to go into the depths of it.
You have to respect personal boundaries.
But you know, I've recently gone through a big breakup, a big long-term relationship that I very much thought was it for me. And for all the right reasons, personally, for both of us, it ended with so much love, because we weren't quite aligned on what the next steps were. But in that process, what has been really reinforced to me is the people I work with, like you, who pick me up, the people I work with, one of our trainers, who literally was texting me after the breakup daily to check in personally, and sent me the most beautiful message. one line of which I want tattooed somewhere on my body, which was, "You on the bones of your arse are enough." And I think for me, intentional life design, we often focus on the outputs that are quite financial, or they're quite life stability, or they're really typical goals. I want to buy a house, I want to start a family, I want to find my partner. And I really want us to explore within this show what some non-traditional bits that we might want to design into our lives might be.
Yeah.
I'm really curious for you, what does intentional life design mean? Because I think lots of people who know you and look at you, and definitely I would have been one of those people, would know that you're a very reflective person, but you've also kind of got your life very together, right? Got a beautiful family, you're doing interesting and meaningful work. So for some of us observing, it might be like, cool, Andy, you're nailing it, but like, what do you need to intentionally design? Got it sorted.
On the surface, everyone sees the shiny life. You know, the LinkedIn profile, the accolades, the way that someone would introduce me on stage, the way that someone would learn about me if they Googled me. But underneath that is the reality of what's going on. You know, underneath that, I'm trying to balance being a present father to a 2-year-old and an 8-year-old while doing work that I love. I will love my family, I love my work, but I always have a trade-off on what I can and can't do. I've got this international opportunity that I have to reject because I don't want to miss out on my daughter's school play. You know, I've got parents that even in next Thursday, which means that I can't go to this event where I was gonna be around my network and my people. And, you know, every week, every month, I'm making these trade-off decisions and sometimes making the wrong decisions, right? So being more intentional for me is about being more proactive in how I can communicate with my wife, be more proactive around how I manage my calendar and my journal, be more proactive around self-compassion and self-care for myself. Right, like having grace for myself when things don't go to plan, you know. So I think there's a lot of areas of my life where I seek improvement and I seek consistency. You know, even in my fitness journal, I remember writing this month that October, I did the most workouts this whole year. And I was proud of that for a second and then really upset with the rest of the months, feeling like why haven't I been as consistent? Like, I can wake up earlier, I can, and I just started having that conversation with myself, almost like beating myself up a little bit. But it's a great example of where, no, I just need to be a bit more intentional, going to bed a little bit earlier, waking up a little bit earlier where I can. Where I can't, it's all right, give myself grace. But I need to be intentional in order to make that improvement. You know.
And you told me a quote earlier that I loved, that you're teaching to year 11 or 11-year-olds. I love that.
My cousins asked me to come and speak to the year 11s, and I thought, you know what an honor. Like, I would love to pour into kids in the way that I wish someone poured into me. And once when I was doing that summer school, one of the kids said to me, do you know what, you are my favorite teacher. So I took that serious and said, you know what, I need to do more with young people at this age group. But that quote went somewhere along the lines of, like in life, we aim to be a great parent, we aim to be a good coach, we aim to be a good teacher, we aim to be physically better in the gym and more fitter, we aim to eat healthier. But all of these are things that have no finish line. You know, the things that we're going to have to be at peace with, that we're going to continuously work on, continuously build on. So the real goal here is to enjoy the journey and accept that this journey may never end. And I think it takes real humility to be at peace with that. You know, I know that I will never be this great almighty XYZ, and I'm at peace with that. I know that I'm a great facilitator and I'm a decent public speaker, but I may never be as big as certain names, and I'm at peace with that. I know that even though I've got an aspirational lifestyle that I want to keep up, I may never become a billionaire, and I'm at peace with that. And the more I'm at peace with all of it, the more insignificant I feel in this world, and the more I feel at peace even more. Because I'm like, actually, I'm a nobody and a nothing, and that's quite nice. You know?
I feel like we have very different personalities. I think if I felt like a nobody and nothing, I would have an existential crisis. But I think that's... But I
think it keeps my ego in check.
I love that.
It keeps me with that humility and that beginner's mindset of, like, Andy, like, there's more to learn. Even though people see you as a teacher, you're always a student.
Yeah.
You know, and regardless of someone's age or stage, you can learn from them. And that creates that mutual learning opportunity for me always, and keeps life exciting.
I think that, for me, that comes back to there are so many threads that we'll share, but there are also personality differences that someone listening or me and you will have that will be a slightly different need and a different reframe. But I love that idea of the continuous growth, keeping the humility, keeping the curiosity. And I think the other thing that strikes me is about what you just said is we're making constant choices. And I think it's so easy to let our lives happen to us and to relinquish a sense of agency. We still have the agency, we just pretend we don't. And we let a decision pass us by, but a non-decision is a decision.
Absolutely.
And so that's, I think, one of the big things we're going to pick up on. I think sometimes that all feels quite ungrounded. It's also subjective. It's also in the moment. And this is where I really like the idea of your tracker. Can you explain it to people who have no idea what we're talking about?
Sure.
And then to me, who's going to use it, what on earth am I meant to do?
So my curiosity tracker or life tracker is a fancy name for a digital journal. A journal, a way of documenting my lived experience and what I'm going through. The rationale behind it is that I know I can't rely on my memory and my brain alone. I need a second memory, I need a second brain, I need something that I can look back on as an extension of myself. And I learned about like creating this tracker when I first went backpacking when I was 21, which is many moons ago. But during that experience, I went to South America for 3 months, backpacked across Peru, Bolivia, Argentina, Brazil, Paraguay, Chile, and had the most incredible time. And at that time, I had a little booklet, a notepad where I was writing all of my experiences. And I actually read it a few weeks ago. And I remember, for example, this trip where we're in Bolivia, in La Paz, I believe, and we're in a market. And I was in a group with a group of travelers and backpackers at the time, hand on each other's shoulder, walking through this busy market just to stay together because it was so busy. And a lady brushed past me, a very elderly lady. And I remember shivering when she touched me. So I turned around and I heard her say something to me in Spanish. And behind me was a Guatemalan lady who was like ex-army in the US. And she asked like, "Oh, Andy, do you understand what she just said to you?" And I said, "I don't know what she said, but I felt like I felt that she said something to me. And it didn't feel like an insult." And she laughed. And she said, "Andy, she said that he's got a blessed spirit."
Oh, you do?
And it meant so much to me. And when I read that back in my journal, I was like, I'm so happy I wrote that down.
Yeah.
Because I would never have remembered that. And there was no picture in that moment. That was just something that happened. But because I could look back and read at that and remind myself, she said, "You got a blessed spirit." Actually, I believe I have a blessed spirit. It's so good that I can read that encouragement that someone else sees what I see in myself. So even in that little moment, it shows the value of me having, like, tracking my experiences, being able to go back to be reinforcing that learning and reminding myself of who I am. So that small experience is what inspired me to say, no, I gotta keep track of my experiences. And the reason that I went digital rather than physical is because I used to work as a product manager in tech companies. And typically when we'd release a product, we would have some sort of analytics or tracking. So we used to use platforms like Google Analytics or Mixpanel to track how the product is performing. So how many people are dropping off at registration? How many users are actually doing the thing that we want them to do within this product? And I loved it because it would tell me patterns around how people are using a product. So I said to myself, if I'm doing that for products at work, for someone that's employing me, how am I doing this for myself? So I created this digital journal in a tool called Notion. They're not sponsoring me yet, but they bloody well should be.
Notion, we are accepting sponsorship.
And I created a database in Notion where I had 2 categories. The first category is all around like things like health and fitness, my family, emotions and spirituality, work and business, friends and community. So I'd have these high-level categories where I would want to categorize the experiences that I'm tracking in my journal. And the second level was around what do these mean? So it was wins, lessons, which is my reframing of failures, actions and testimonials. And testimonials was like feedback or people sharing things about me. I've also got a new category this year called higher self. But we'll cover that in another podcast episode.
Oh, I'm not ready for my higher self.
That's dialogue with your higher self. That's a whole episode in itself.
Give me the beginner version, Andy.
But what I love within my tracker is that I could go back to when we had our first meeting, and I can go and look at that. It was probably under work and business. It was probably under like wins, and I could look back at how I felt in that moment and what I said in that moment about our interaction. And I think it's so special that I have this archive and this library of what I've been experiencing over the last 9 years that I've been digitally captured. And every 6 months, I go back and look at like what's brought me energy and what's drained my energy. Yeah. What's worked well, what hasn't worked so well, and what would I do differently? And I'm able to connect the dots now because I've got these categories to say, what does that look like across work and business? What does that look like across my journey spiritually? What does that look like across my marriage, which is one of my categories? So it allows me to optimize and do more of what brings me energy and hopefully reduce the things that don't bring me energy. And in there, it's not just what I'm writing, I take screenshots. So you can send me a WhatsApp message and I might screenshot it.
I was thinking that I'm going to put your message in my testimonial section.
Absolutely. Or the other day, my friend Ruth sent me a voice note and I saved it in my journal. And she's like, Andy, I don't know how many, if anyone ever tells you this, but you're a gift to this world. I'm like, when I'm feeling down, I need to listen to that message. When I'm forgetting who I am, or I'm letting imposter syndrome or limiting beliefs take over me, I need to remind myself of who I am by looking back at these messages that are evidence of who I am.
I love that.
So that's why the track is so valuable and important.
Do you do it daily?
Why I'm so passionate about sharing it. I do it whenever I feel like it.
Okay.
Yeah, but I think starting a daily practice or weekly practice is good to establish a habit.
Yeah, I need a habit.
But once you have the habit, then I think you do it when you feel like it. So I will journal today.
Okay.
You know, I will take some pictures today and I will put it in my journal, but that's because it feels like the right thing to do.
I love it. So we're going to put the link to that.
Yes.
Will be in this week's newsletter. The link to the newsletter is in the bio.
Yes, so and I am going to create a Google Sheets version to make it more accessible. Brilliant. Which is a little bit of work on my end, but I'm happy to give a gift to the world. So I will do it.
Right there.
I would do it.
Beautiful. And maybe one journaling prompt to take into that, which we'll again put back in the newsletter, is a...
Can I come up with... This is a bit of a boomerang. I know this is a curveball. We didn't discuss this. But I think one prompt that might be quite good for everyone to do.
Tell us.
Is to ask at least 9 people that you know, ex-colleagues, current colleagues, friends, family, what do you think that I'm really good at?
I love that.
Just that simple question. What do you think that I'm really good at?
I like that more than the one I was going to say. So we're going to go with that. And
then we're going to analyze the themes of what comes back, and we're going to see how it matches what you think of yourself.
And start taking screenshots, putting the video voice notes into your journal as the first thing you have.
And I will do that exercise as well. I've done it years ago, but I will do it
I've got to do these exercises. Okay, I'll go and do it as well.
You will be one of my 9.
Oh God, I think I'm going to cry.
You will be one of my 9.
Oh, okay, I'm excited.
There we go.
Okay, 9 people. And please also tell us what you would like to hear more of in this series. We have themes in our minds, but we would love to know from you. So please also feel free to drop us a note. You can connect with us on LinkedIn. You can drop us a note on LinkedIn. But we want to know, what would you like to hear more about over the season, untangling your life?
I'm feeling a bit more untangled already.
Untangling our lives. I love it.